Americans love to think they can do anything. Bigger burgers? Done. Faster internet? Done. Sending a man to the moon? Easy, but try copying certain British habits? Forget it. It's like watching someone wear a tuxedo to a barbecue, it just doesn't fit. For example, Americans might love the idea of a quiet pub on a rainy afternoon, but in practice, you'll find karaoke, oversized beer pitchers, and someone yelling at the football game on 12 TVs. That serene British vibe, gone in seconds. Or take sarcasm. Brits use sarcasm like Americans use ketchup. They put it on everything. But when Americans try it, it usually sounds either mean or just confusing. And Brits can spot the difference instantly. In this video, we're counting down 10 British habits Americans just can't copy. Some are funny, some are cultural, and some are just so deeply British that if you tried them in the US, people would look at you like you'd lost your mind. From queuing like it's a national sport, to drinking tea like it's liquid oxygen, to apologizing for things that aren't even your fault. These are the habits that make Brits uniquely British and leave Americans scratching their heads. But trust me, by the end of this, you'll not only laugh at the differences, you'll see why these habits work in the UK and why they crash and burn in the US. And wait until you hear number 10, that one. Americans wouldn't last a single day trying it. The art of queuing, standing in line like a pro, if there's one thing the British have perfected, it's the queue. Queuing in the UK isn't just a way to wait your turn. It's practically a sacred ritual. There's an unspoken social contract that says, we all stand here quietly, in perfect order, and God help you if you even think about cutting in. Americans, on the other hand? Lines are chaos. Sure, they form at Starbucks or the DMV, but watch closely. People hover, they shuffle, they stand at weird angles as if debating whether they're in the line or not. At airports, it's a full-on stampede once boarding starts. Half the passengers are already crowding the gate 20 minutes early, even though their zone won't be called until next week. Brits, meanwhile, treat the queue like a matter of national pride. There's no yelling, no rushing, no cutting. And if someone does try to sneak ahead, oh, the fury! It won't be loud. No one's going to shout. But you will feel the death stares of 30 polite but furious Brits burning into your soul. And the passive-aggressive coughs, brutal. Why can't Americans copy this? Because the US runs on speed and convenience. Americans love express lanes, priority boarding, and skip-the-line passes. Disney even sells special tickets just to avoid queues. In America, standing in line patiently isn't seen as virtuous. It's seen as a failure to game the system. Picture a Brit patiently waiting for their bus in the rain, umbrella tucked neatly, moving forward exactly one polite step at a time. Now picture an American drive-thru, with 4 lanes of SUVs all jockeying to shave 30 seconds off their wait for a cheeseburger. Different universes. And here's the kicker. In Britain, queuing is so ingrained that it works without rules. No ropes, no barriers, no signs. Just a line of people who understand the code. In America, if you tried that, forget it. People would wander off, form sublines, or argue over who was there first. So yes, Americans admire the British art of queuing, but copy it? Not a chance. In the US, the line is less of an institution and more of a temporary inconvenience. Something to be hacked, skipped, or avoided at all costs. But if you think that's funny, just wait until you hear the next British habit Americans can't master. Because this one involves America's greatest weakness. Tea. Drinking tea like it's a way of life. Tea in Britain isn't just a drink. It's a lifestyle, a coping mechanism, a social glue, and honestly, a national emergency plan. Bad day? Have a cuppa. Good day? Celebrate with a cuppa. Awkward silence? Fill it with a cuppa. Nuclear apocalypse? Don't worry, the kettle's on. Americans, of course, drink tea too, but it's just not the same. In the US, tea usually means iced tea, often sweetened to the point where it could double as pancake syrup. If you order tea in an American diner, there's a good chance you'll get a sad little tea bag on the side of a lukewarm mug of water. No ceremony, no ritual, just disappointment. In Britain, the kettle is basically the beating heart of every household. The sound of it boiling is like a national anthem. Everyone has their own way of making it. Milk first or milk after. Strong brew or weak. Sugar or no sugar. Arguments over the right way to make tea have destroyed friendships, ended relationships, and probably caused more drama than Brexit. Americans simply cannot copy this. For starters, most homes don't even own an electric kettle. If you tell a Brit you microwaved your water for tea, watch their face. It's like you just said you season your steak with toothpaste. And it's not just about the taste, it's about timing. Brits drink tea all the time. Morning, afternoon, late at night. In the workplace, tea breaks are sacred. In America, coffee break means grab a Starbucks and power through. In Britain, a tea break means stop everything, chat with your mates, and remember life's not that bad because, hey, you've got a biscuit too. Then there's the unspoken power of tea in social situations. A Brit will offer you tea within 2 minutes of you entering their home. Doesn't matter if you're the plumber, the neighbor, or a long-lost cousin. Fancy a cuppa? Is basically hello, welcome, and let's be civil all rolled into one. In the US, if someone visits, they might offer water. If they're generous, maybe soda. But tea is a universal gesture of hospitality? Nope. And let's be honest, tea just doesn't have the same cultural weight in the States. Coffee is king. Starbucks is on every corner. Iced lattes are practically a fashion accessory, and Americans treat coffee like rocket fuel. Tea? That's for when you're sick or when you've run out of coffee filters. So yes, Americans might drink tea occasionally, but the way Brits treat it? That's not just a habit, it's a way of life. And that, my friends, is something Americans simply can't copy. But if you think tea culture is hard to imitate, wait until you see how Brits handle apologies, even when nothing's actually their fault. The national sport of apologizing. If Britain had to pick an official national sport, forget football, it would be apologizing. Brits apologize for everything. Bump into someone? Sorry. Someone bumps into you? Sorry. Trip over a chair? Sorry. The chair? Sorry. It's like the entire country is locked in an endless game of politeness chess, and the only legal move is sorry. Now, Americans do say sorry too, but it's not the same. In the US, sorry usually comes with conditions. Sorry, but... or sorry you feel that way. Sometimes it even sounds like a challenge. Meanwhile, British apologies are so reflexive they barely mean anything. It's less about guilt and more about oiling the social gears. Here's an example. Imagine two Brits bumping into each other in the supermarket aisle. Sorry. No, sorry. No, my fault, sorry. No, really, sorry. 5 minutes later, they're still there, trying to out-apologize each other, while the rest of the world wonders why no one has moved. Now, picture the American version. Two people bump carts in Walmart. At best, you'll get, excuse me. At worst, watch where you're going, buddy. And that's it, they've moved on. No 10-round sparring match of politeness. Why can't Americans copy this? Because in the US, apologies are seen differently. They carry weight. Saying sorry is often tied to admitting fault, which can spiral into legal territory. In Britain, it's just second nature, almost meaningless, like saying or like. And let's not forget the preemptive apology. Brits will say sorry before they've even done anything wrong. Sorry, could I just squeeze past? Or sorry, but is this seat taken? Americans, they'd say, excuse me, is this seat taken? No apology necessary. To a Brit, not apologizing feels rude. To an American, apologizing feels unnecessary. The funniest part is when Brits visit America and realize their default setting of apologizing makes people look at them funny. An American hears a Brit saying sorry 10 times in a row and thinks, what's wrong with this guy? Did he commit a crime? But in Britain, constant apologizing keeps the peace. It's like a social buffer, softening every interaction so no one gets too worked up. It's part of that famously understated British way of handling life. Quiet, polite, and just a little awkward. And here's the twist. While Americans might admire the politeness, if they tried it themselves, it wouldn't work. The culture just doesn't run on sorry. In the US, confidence rules. Over-apologize and people might think you're weak or insecure. So yes, apologizing is a British habit through and through, one Americans will never fully adopt. But if you think saying sorry for everything is strange, just wait until you hear about what Brits do with their weather obsession. That one? Americans don't even come close. Talking about the weather nonstop. If Britain had a national icebreaker, it wouldn't be sports or politics, it would be the weather. Rain, drizzle, sun, snow, clouds, fog, you name it. Brits will talk about it. Not once, not twice, but constantly. It's not just small talk, it's a cultural script. Meeting a neighbor? Bit chilly today, isn't it? Getting in a taxi. Hope the rain holds off. I'm standing in line. Looks like it might brighten up later. Weather chat isn't about the actual weather. It's a social handshake. Americans, of course, talk about the weather too, but it doesn't play the same role. In the US, weather chat usually happens only if it's extreme. Tornadoes, hurricanes, blizzards, heat waves. Americans love a dramatic weather story. Yeah, last winter snow was up to my roof. That's a conversation starter. But daily drizzle? Nobody's writing a saga about that. Why can't Americans copy this? Because their weather is too varied and too dramatic. Britain, with its constant gray skies and endless drizzle, needs weather talk as entertainment. Americans live across such a massive country that weather means different things. Telling someone in California it rained all week is meaningless to someone in Arizona, where it hasn't rained since the Bush administration. In Britain, the monotony of the weather makes it safe territory. Everyone experiences the same gloom. Talking about it is harmless, uncontroversial, and universally understood. In America, if you want safe small talk, you go with sports, weekend plans, or how's work. Weather just doesn't have that central place in daily interaction. And here's the kicker: Brits don't just talk about the weather, they perform it. The sigh when it rains again. The sarcastic, lovely day, isn't it? When it's clearly miserable. The excited panic when the sun actually shows up. Quick, get the barbecue out before it disappears. Americans don't have that same shared theater of weather commentary. There's also the British emotional connection to weather. Sunshine is like a national holiday. A heat wave, meaning like 25 centimeters sparks front page headlines. Americans laugh at this. 25-degree Celsius in Texas is just Tuesday morning, but in Britain, that's tropical chaos. Offices hand out fans, schools close early, and supermarkets run out of ice lollies. And don't even get started on snow. Half an inch of snow in London shuts everything down. Trains stop, schools close, headlines scream, Snowmageddon. Meanwhile, in Minnesota, kids are still biking to school in 15 degrees away. Americans just cannot copy the drama Brits attach to weather. So yes, Americans can talk about the weather, but they'll never do it with the same passion, frequency, and sheer commitment as the British. For Brits, it's not just a conversation, it's a survival mechanism. But if you think weather talk is uniquely British, wait until you hear about the next habit. Something Americans truly cannot get their heads around: the obsession with the pub. Pub culture is a way of life. If you want to understand the British soul, don't look at Buckingham Palace or Big Ben. Look at the pub. The pub isn't just a place to drink. It's a living room, a town hall, a comedy club, a therapy session, and sometimes even a second home. For Brits, the pub is woven into the fabric of everyday life in a way Americans just can't copy. Sure, America has bars, lots of them. But bars in the US tend to be about consumption. You go in, grab a drink, maybe watch a game, and head out. British pubs, they're about community. You don't just go to a pub, you belong to one. You know the staff, the regulars, the dog that sits by the fireplace, and the exact time old Dave comes in to order his pint of bitter. Americans can't replicate that because their drinking culture is totally different. For one, the US has stricter alcohol laws. Drinking age is 21. Many towns have dry counties, bars close early. In Britain, you can legally start drinking at 18, and let's be real, many people start earlier at home. Pubs are everywhere, and last orders is more of a suggestion than a rule. There's also the pub's role in social life. In Britain, everything happens in a pub. Birthdays, first dates, wakes, business meetings, Sunday lunches, darts tournaments, even political debates. You can walk in alone and still feel like part of something. Try walking into a bar alone in the US, and people might assume you're waiting for someone. Or worse, that you're kind of sad. And then there's the food. Once mocked as bland, pub grub is now legendary. Fish and chips, shepherd's pie, bangers and mash, Sunday roast with Yorkshire pudding. The American equivalent is bar food. Wings, nachos, burgers. Good, sure, but not the same heart and soul, sit-down, family-friendly meal. Let's not forget the pub quiz. A truly British invention. Trivia nights where teams compete over obscure facts while downing pints. It's intellectual, it's competitive, it's hilarious. America has trivia nights too, but in Britain, the pub quiz is an institution. Your gran knows when quiz night is. Whole villages turn up for it. And then there's the architecture. Pubs are often centuries old with low wooden beams, crooked floors, and names like the King's Arms or the Dog and Duck. American bars rarely have that same sense of history. They're more about neon signs and flat-screen TVs. A British pub feels timeless. An American bar often feels temporary. Why can't Americans copy pub culture? Because it's not just about drinking, it's about the social fabric that surrounds it. The pub is where Brits decompress, laugh, argue, and bond. It's an extension of home. Without that shared tradition, American bars will never quite feel the same. Sarcasm and humor as a default language. If you ever want to confuse an American, just drop them in the middle of a British dinner party. They'll hear a steady stream of sarcastic remarks, ironic observations, and dry one-liners, none of which come with a wink or a smile. And the poor American will spend the evening wondering, wait, were they serious? Sarcasm and dry humor are a British specialty. It's not just a comedic style, it's practically the national language. Brits will say the exact opposite of what they mean, completely straight-faced, and everyone in the room will chuckle knowingly. Example, it's pouring rain outside and someone says, "Lovely day, isn't it?" That's classic British humor. Americans, on the other hand, aren't wired the same way. American humor tends to be louder, more obvious, and signposted with big laughs, punchlines, or exaggerated delivery. Think stand-up comedy clubs, sitcom laugh tracks, or Saturday Night Live sketches. You know when you're supposed to laugh. In Britain, you might not even realize a joke has been told until 2 minutes later when it suddenly clicks. The humor is subtle, dry, sometimes self-deprecating, and often slipped into serious conversations without any signal. And if you don't get it, well, tough luck, you're just left in the dust. Why can't Americans copy this? Partly because sarcasm in the US can easily come across as rude or hostile. In Britain, sarcasm is social glue. It's how friends show affection, how colleagues diffuse tension, and how people survive awkward moments. Brits can trade sarcastic remarks for hours without anyone actually getting offended. Try that in the US and you risk someone taking it at face value and storming out. There's also the British love of understatement. A disastrous holiday where the car broke down, the hotel caught fire, and the food was inedible. A Brit might sum it up with, well, it could have been worse. Americans would write a 3-paragraph Yelp review and demand a refund. That restrained, tongue-in-cheek delivery is just hard to duplicate in a culture that thrives on enthusiasm and exaggeration. And then there's self-deprecation, the crown jewel of British humor. Brits are experts at making fun of themselves before anyone else can. "Oh, I'm terrible at this," or, "Well, that was clever of me," said after tripping over their own feet. Americans do self-deprecation too, but usually in a way that circles back to confidence or as part of a rehearsed comedy routine. In Britain, it's everyday conversation. So when Americans try to copy British sarcasm, it often feels forced or worse, mean-spirited. Without the shared cultural context, it just doesn't land the same way. Brits have mastered the art of making mockery feel affectionate. Americans, not so much. But if you think sarcasm is hard for Americans to master, wait until you hear about the British habit of apologizing for, well, absolutely everything. The love of understatement. If sarcasm is the British weapon of choice, understatement is their shield. This habit is so ingrained that it sometimes feels like Brits have an allergy to showing strong emotions in public. Americans? They'll tell you if something was amazing, life-changing, or the worst day ever. Brits? They'll shrug and say, not too bad. Picture this. A British guy just won the lottery. In America, that's instant screaming, hugging strangers, calling the news, and maybe even a TikTok livestream. In Britain, the winner might just mutter, well, that's rather nice, isn't it? That's understatement in action. It's the same with disasters. If an American flight is delayed 2 hours, passengers will be demanding compensation, filming angry videos, and trending hashtags on Twitter. In Britain, a flight could be canceled outright, and someone in the queue might sigh and say, well, that's a bit inconvenient. That's not denial, that's cultural programming. Americans find this baffling because American culture encourages expression, sometimes even exaggeration. Everything's bigger, louder, more dramatic. British understatement feels almost alien to them. Imagine an American hearing that someone had a bit of a rough patch and then discovering it meant the person went through a messy divorce, lost their job, and broke their leg in the same month. To a Brit, that phrasing feels natural. To an American, it sounds like minimizing reality. So why can't Americans copy it? Because understatement requires an entire culture that values restraint and irony. In Britain, downplaying things is a way of staying humble, of avoiding awkwardness, and of signaling toughness. In America, understatement often gets misread as indifference, or worse, lack of confidence. Take British sports commentary. A football, soccer match could be pure chaos. Players diving, fans chanting, managers screaming, and the commentator calmly says, well, that's a bit lively. Compare that to American sports commentary, where a single touchdown gets you fireworks-level hype. Understatement just doesn't fit the US playbook. There's also the way understatement pairs with humor. Brits will describe the most outrageous situations as if they were minor hiccups. Someone narrowly avoids a car accident? Bit close, that. Lost their house keys in a rainstorm? Slight bother. It's funny because it's so absurdly restrained. Americans tend to go the other way, leaning into drama for comic effect. And here's the twist. Understatement isn't just politeness. It's a coping mechanism. It keeps emotions in check, avoids drawing too much attention, and lets people bond over mutual low-key suffering. For Brits, understatement is cool-headed resilience disguised as casual observation. Americans trying to adopt it often sound awkward. Saying it's fine in an obviously not fine situation doesn't carry the same dry humor. It just seems dishonest. That's why understatement remains a peculiarly British skill, one that foreigners admire but rarely master. But if understatement sounds tricky, wait until we talk about another British habit Americans can't quite figure out: the obsession with class and subtle social codes, the class system, and unspoken social rules. If you really want to confuse an American, don't throw them into a cricket match or a drizzle-soaked summer barbecue. Just ask them to figure out Britain's class system. It's invisible, it's complicated, and it runs through daily life in ways outsiders can barely detect. In the US, people love to believe in the idea of a classless society. Sure, there are rich and poor, but Americans talk more about money than class. You can reinvent yourself, climb the social ladder, and nobody cares what your grandparents did for a living. In Britain, not so fast. Your accent, your vocabulary, even how you hold a teacup can reveal volumes about your background. Take the famous example of you versus non-you language, a concept from the 1950s where linguists studied how different social classes used different words. Upper-class folks said loo, while others said toilet. The word napkin sounded posh, but serviette didn't. These tiny linguistic markers told people exactly where you stood. Americans hearing this think, wait, people care about napkin versus serviette? Yes. Yes, they do. And it's not just language. Brits pick up on cues Americans don't even notice. School ties, subtle clothing choices, weekend hobbies. Did you go to a private boarding school? Do you play rugby or football? Even how you pronounce scone, rhymes with gone or cone, can reveal something about your social circle. Americans, by contrast, often just think, cool, free snacks. This obsession with class bleeds into humor, friendships, even dating. Brits know instinctively how to navigate it, often by downplaying their own status. Americans, on the other hand, might stumble in without realizing they've committed a faux pas. For example, bragging openly about wealth or career achievements in Britain can come off as tacky, while in the US, it's almost expected in certain circles. Here's why Americans can't copy this habit. It doesn't fit their culture of openness and reinvention. America celebrates boldness, telling your story, showing off your hustle, proving your success. Britain, in contrast, has centuries of entrenched social layers, and pretending they don't exist is almost impossible. Even when Brits joke about class, they're acknowledging its constant presence. It gets even stranger when Americans try to join in. A US visitor might mimic a posh accent for laughs, but to Brits, those nuances aren't just funny. They're loaded with history and meaning. What sounds like harmless parody to an American can feel like a dead giveaway that they don't understand the rules. And here's the kicker. Many Brits claim the class system doesn't matter anymore. But then, in the next breath, they'll judge a politician for sounding too posh or a celebrity for getting above themselves. It's a cultural reflex that Americans simply can't replicate, because it's built on centuries of social codes that never existed across the Atlantic. But if you think the class system is tricky, wait until you hear about another habit Americans can't copy: the British knack for complaining. Politely, of course. Complaining is a cultural art form. Now, Americans love to complain too, but they do it differently. In the US, complaining is often loud, direct, and aimed at fixing the problem immediately. Wrong order at a restaurant? Send it back. Bad customer service? Ask for the manager. Car broke down? Vent about it on Facebook in all caps. Brits, on the other hand, have turned complaining into a subtle, almost elegant art form. It's not about demanding results. It's about expressing dissatisfaction in the most restrained, roundabout way possible. Instead of shouting, "This is unacceptable," a Brit might quietly say, that's not ideal, is it?" And that's it. That one phrase carries the full weight of their disappointment. There's also the famous polite complaint. Brits don't want to cause a scene, so they'll wrap their annoyance in layers of courtesy. Example, the soup arrives cold. An American says, "Excuse me, this is cold. Can I get a hot one?" A Brit? "I'm terribly sorry, but I think this might be a little cooler than expected." Translation, it's stone cold and I'm upset, but I'm going to smile while saying it. Even more fascinating is the delayed complaint. Brits might not even mention a problem in the moment. They'll eat the undercooked chicken, say thank you, and then mutter about it for weeks afterward to friends and family. The restaurant never knows, but the story gets retold 100 times. Americans, by contrast, tend to complain on the spot, or leave a one-star Yelp review before they've even left the parking lot. And let's not forget the collective complaint. Brits bond over shared grumbling. The train is late? Perfect excuse for everyone on the platform to exchange weary sighs and mutterings about how it's always like this. It's less about fixing the train system and more about building solidarity through moaning together. Americans do complain collectively too, but usually in louder, more activist ways, with petitions, boycotts, or full-blown lawsuits. Why can't Americans copy this? Because US culture rewards directness. Be clear, be firm, get results. The British style of restrained, ironic complaining doesn't work in a country where customer service often expects you to state exactly what's wrong. If an American tried the subtle approach, I think this might not be quite right. The server might just nod and walk away. Problem unsolved. And here's the twist. British complaining is less about fixing things and more about coping with them. It's part of that keep calm and carry on attitude. Acknowledge the frustration, but don't let it explode. Americans expect complaints to change things. Brits complain as a way to survive things. Germans and Scandinavians might add, we give world-class education for free, actually. But that doesn't matter to Americans. In their eyes, prestige isn't about history or affordability. It's about branding. And when it comes to branding, US universities are untouchable. And let's not forget Hollywood again. How many movies and TV shows have you seen set on an American college campus with the red brick buildings, the frat parties, the football games under the Friday night lights? America turned higher education into pop culture. That cultural export only strengthens their belief that they're the global leaders in knowledge. So when Americans boast about being the best, they'll often point to their universities as living proof. The smartest minds, the biggest breakthroughs, the flashiest diplomas. In their narrative, higher education is another crown jewel of American greatness. Space exploration and NASA pride. If there's one achievement that Americans will never let the world forget, it's this. They put a man on the moon. In 1969, when Neil Armstrong took that one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, the US didn't just win the space race against the Soviet Union, it locked in a permanent bragging right. To this day, Americans point to the moon landing as proof that their country is capable of literally reaching heights no one else has. And it's not just history. NASA remains one of America's proudest institutions. Space shuttles, Mars rovers, the Hubble telescope, these aren't just scientific tools, they're national symbols. Every time NASA posts a new photo of a galaxy or a Martian landscape, Americans feel a little taller, like their country has eyes on the universe while everyone else is stuck on Earth. Brits? They'll wait until the neighbor is gone before putting the bins out, just to avoid small talk. Why can't Americans copy this? Because US culture thrives on openness. Oversharing isn't just accepted, it's monetized. Think Instagram stories, YouTube vlogs, reality TV. Americans put their private lives on display for entertainment. Brits, meanwhile, find the idea of telling millions of strangers what you had for breakfast deeply uncomfortable. And it's not just about conversations. Brits also have stricter unspoken rules about physical space. Standing too close in a queue? Social crime. Hugging someone you just met? Absolutely not. Americans are more tactile. Handshakes, hugs, even the occasional high five with strangers. Brits save that kind of physical contact for family, close friends, and maybe weddings. Here's the kicker. Privacy isn't just about being reserved, it's about politeness. Brits genuinely believe they're being considerate by not prying or getting too close. Americans might see it as coldness, but to Brits, it's respect. So yes, Americans can admire British privacy, but they'll never truly copy it. It runs against the American instinct to connect, share, and broadcast. But if you think privacy quirks are tricky, wait until you hear the final habit on this list. Something Americans truly struggle with. British mealtime manners and dining etiquette. British dining etiquette. Sit down for a meal in Britain and you'll quickly realize this isn't just eating, it's ritual. Table manners aren't optional, they're expected. And Americans? Well, let's just say their casual fork in one hand, burger in the other style doesn't quite translate across the pond. First off, the fork and knife situation. Brits eat with the fork in the left hand and the knife in the right, through the entire meal. Cutting, scooping, balancing peas like it's an Olympic sport. Americans? They use what's known as the zigzag method. Cut a piece of food with knife in the right hand, fork in left, then put the knife down, switch the fork to the right, and eat. Rinse and repeat. To Brits, this looks clumsy and exhausting. To Americans, it's normal. Then there's how food itself is treated. Brits keep things neat, elbows off the table, no slurping, and definitely no talking with your mouth full. Americans, meanwhile, are more relaxed. Eating is social, fun, and sometimes loud. Burgers dripping down your hand? No problem. Pizza folded in half? Totally fine. Brits see this and think chaos. Another big one, waiting. In Britain, everyone waits until all plates are served before starting. In the US, it's often dig in as soon as your food hits the table. Brits consider this rude. Americans consider it practical. Why let hot food go cold just for politeness? Even small things differ. In Britain, you keep your hands visible but not resting on the table. Wrists up, elbows down. In America, elbows on the table are fine in casual settings. Brits also tend to eat slower, treating meals as a calm social event. Americans, faster pace, bigger portions, and plenty of refills. And don't even mention tipping. In the US, tipping is practically mandatory, 15 to 20%, or you risk dirty looks. In Britain, tipping is smaller, more selective, and not expected in pubs or casual spots. The American obsession with tipping feels alien to Brits, who already think service charges are cheeky. So why can't Americans copy British etiquette? Because dining culture reflects broader values. America thrives on convenience, speed, and informality. Britain values tradition, restraint, and quiet order, even at dinner. Trying to import British table manners into an American diner would feel absurd. Imagine someone carefully balancing peas on a fork while eating ribs at a Texas barbecue. Exactly. And here's the kicker. These little dining habits reveal bigger cultural contrasts. Britain leans toward subtlety, America toward openness. Even at the dinner table, the differences are clear. But now that we've covered mealtime manners, let's tie it all together and wrap this up properly. So there you have it. 10 British habits that leave Americans scratching their heads. From apologizing like it's a reflex, to treating weather chat like a national pastime, to queuing with the discipline of Olympic athletes, Brits have turned ordinary things into cultural masterpieces. Add in pubs that feel like second homes, tea that's practically a blood type, understatement so dry it could survive the Sahara, sarcasm sharper than a fencing sword, an obsession with privacy that makes CIA agents look chatty, and table manners that turn dinner into choreography, and you've got a recipe for habits Americans just can't copy. Of course, it's not that Americans don't have their own quirks. They do. Big ones. From bottomless soda refills to drive-through everything, Americans have built a lifestyle that's equally fascinating to Brits. But that's what makes these cross-cultural comparisons so fun. They remind us that what feels normal in one country can look hilariously odd in another. And here's the funny bit. Half of these British habits are things Brits themselves roll their eyes at. Complaining, queuing, talking about the weather, it's all part of the comedy of everyday life. Yet to outsiders, they're uniquely charming. Americans admire the politeness, the restraint, the sense of tradition. But when they try to copy it, it just feels off. Because these aren't just habits, they're cultural DNA. They only make sense when you're steeped in centuries of drizzle, pub nights, and sorry on repeat. So the next time you see an American fumbling through a British-style apology or trying to balance peas on a fork without switching hands, don't laugh too hard. They're just trying to keep up with a culture that has mastered the art of subtlety. But now it's your turn. What do you think? Which British habit do you find the funniest, the most confusing, or maybe even the most admirable? And if you're American, have you ever tried to copy one of these and failed spectacularly? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to see your stories. Because in the end, whether you're a Brit or an American, we all share one thing in common: laughing at each other's habits. And honestly, that might be the best tradition of all.